Season 1 is all about that dental school student or that new dental school grad or that transitioning dentist, pretty much giving the financial keys to success now that you're in a transition period. So let's go and hop into this episode, and we hope that you enjoy it. If you are listening to this via audio, there is a video format. We actually shoot these live in the studio in video format. You can check those out either on Spotify podcasts, YouTube podcasts as well. Head to our Team Financials YouTube page. You'll be able to find all of these different podcast shows within the video format, if that's what you choose to do.
Hello, welcome back to the Generational Dental Wealth Show. My name is Dr. Jermaine Affetti.
My name is Kingsley Affetti, CPA. So today is going to be a special edition. We're taking you all into a talk that we did at UNC School of Dentistry, where we're invited to pretty much come in and do a seminar on a few different topics. I think that you all will get a lot of value out of this. We talked about many different topics, but the main thing that stuck out was a question that Dr. Affetti asked all of the dental students. He said, what was your biggest non-dental accomplishment? Dr. Affetti, before we hop into that recording, why did you ask that question, and what did that mean?
I like to ask that question just because sometimes we get so caught up in dentistry that we don't realize that life comes before dentistry, right?
Yeah.
Like we do dentistry on real life people who have real pain points, people who have real challenges ahead of them. So for us to skip the psychological component of it and get straight to just the dentistry is missing an entire part of fulfillment that exists within dentistry. So when I ask that question, especially to dental students, because everybody remembers when they were in dental school, it's a grind, right? So I like to help everybody realize that just because you're dealing with the challenges of what's going on does not negate all the amazing things that you've done before that. Have you had kids? Have you served in the military? Are you married? Have you been able to mentor somebody amazingly, right? Like, are you saved? Different things like that are huge accomplishments that, no, they're not dental related, but they have a very close connection with who you see yourself as within dentistry.
Yeah, and I think that's so huge, and I know that the dental school at UNC really appreciated the fact that we brought a different perspective to the talk, and not just the clinical component, but really figuring out how they can continue to elevate and be more not of just a dentist, but more of a professional and holistic person. So let's go ahead and hop into that recording, and then we know that you will love it and see a lot of value from it. So we'll go ahead and hop over.
I'd like for you to do a little bit of introspection, right? Before we talk about practice ownership. For you personally, can you name a personal accomplishment of yours, non-dental specific, non-dental related, that you can share with all of us? I think it's important for you to remember how amazing you are outside of dentistry. You are in dentistry, and sometimes that's all you look at, but you're more than just a dentist, right? Like, once you even graduate, you'll be doing it 8 hours, for us, 12 hours a day, but that's only 3 to 4 days a week. What do you do with the rest of your time? Don't forget who you are while you're going through the process. Does anybody have a non-dental specific accomplishment they would like to share with the group? Again, it doesn't have to be an accomplishment that other people say that's an accomplishment. It can be what you feel is an accomplishment within yourself. Who else got something for me? Okay. All right, so he said basically being a trailblazer. All right, the other one being a big brother. That's a job in itself, right? And then join the organization teams. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Kingsley, what you got for us?
Yeah, so part of what we wanted to do today, bring you on to pretty much the world of practice ownership, like Dr. Affetti has alluded to, right, on the clinical side, right? That's why you all are here. And on the non-clinical side, right, actually running the practice, we just had just some different things to kind of keep in mind, and some different timelines, and just some different, I would say, milestones along the process if you are thinking about owning a dental practice. So these are just, the 6 different steps that we've identified, and then after these right here, we'll actually hop into more of a dialogue. But the first one right here, right, just like you all are doing, information acquisition, right, going to school, working at different practices after school, learning the, ropes of the road, like Dr. Affetti, what he was doing, traveling, right, getting familiar with many different practices in those few years there. Then, right, we start to get into some numbers, how fun, right? Obtaining financing, right? Obviously, stepping outside of the clinical side, right? But that's what it takes, right? To have a practice, to own a practice, right? Kind of timeline number 3 is practice search, which is really big, figuring out where you want to live. Like Dr. Affetti said earlier, at our talk earlier, right? He decided he didn't want to travel and work in places that he wanted to end up living in, right? Because of non-competes and different things like that, right? So figuring out what do you ultimately want to land at. Right here, number 4, purchasing a practice, right? Big step, right? We just have a homeowner, right? This is home ownership on steroids, right? Now you have to go out, you have to find a practice that you're about to purchase, and this is a long-term commitment there. Then 5 right here, building your practice, right? It's not easy. It's a grind. It's an everyday commitment. Then ultimately step number 6, right? I think this is why we're all here. Building your dental wealth life. So that's not just financially, but that's on all aspects there. So what happened to kind of some Q&A with these right here?
Sure. We're going to go through the top 6 questions that we get, especially when it comes to practice ownership. And then from there, we'll open up as a dialogue, and whatever questions, that's burning questions, please ask it now. I know one of the things when I was going through the dental school process, people used to say a lot of like catchphrasey things that I could not understand. One, like, I didn't make money in my practice for like the first 3 or 4 years. I'm just like, bro, explain that. What exactly does that mean? Like, is this like a real loss, or is it because like you're moving things around strategically, or like, and just small stuff like that? How did you go about actually applying for a loan? The basic nuances, right? Sometimes people get so far removed from the beginning that they don't even know how to go through the basic steps. So if you have any questions about any intricate detail, feel free to ask us.
Okay, so we have here, how can I secure funding for the startup costs of a dental practice? And what financing options are available to me?
Let me ask y'all this. Do y'all think it's hard to get financing to start a practice? On a scale of 1 to 10, how hard would you think it is? Yep. They'll loan you about $500,000 without even really thinking too hard about it. Up to $1 million if you have like a real plan laid out. And it's irregardless of how much student loan you have. People can have $500,000 in student loan. They'll give it to you. Why do you think they give it to us? Do you think they just like dentists, and whoever gives out the loan, like they just got a soft spot for dentists? Why do y'all think they give it out so easily? You're going to be able to pay it back. Yeah. And that's why they give out loans so readily to dentists, because you're going to be able to pay it back. So sometimes, believe it or not, people in the outside industry believe in dentistry more than we believe in it on the inside. And that's why it's so easy, because you provide a service that people need. Let me ask y'all this. Do y'all think dentists are needed everywhere, or just like major cities, or like most places? Or do y'all think people got teeth everywhere? Or gums? Anywhere, right? So it's pretty easy as far as when it comes like that. But now, if we're going to go into like the nuances of what's actually needed, one of the biggest things outside of experience and having production reports. Anybody heard of production reports? I wish y'all got production reports here when y'all do stuff in the clinics. But production reports let you know how much you're actually producing. They look at that. They look at how much you want to be loaned, and they say approved or not approved. And that's how they usually go about it. But one of the next things is liquidity. And that's a little bit deeper. Kingsley, what's liquidity?
It's how quickly you can turn something into cash.
So yeah, you want to explain it a little bit further? How does that affect us?
Yeah, so liquidity comes into play as far as whenever you want to make certain moves, right? Typically the bank or whoever you're working with is going to see that you either have enough savings, or God forbid COVID happens again, worst case scenario, you have enough to CYA, right? Cover your behind. And liquidity plays a big part in that, right? Because if everything you own is going to take you 6 months to cash out on, what if bills become due before those 6 months? So it's how able you are to stay, I guess, flexible in the times of challenge, right? That's why liquidity is important.
So when it comes to actually securing it, honestly, it's as simple as an application, to be honest with you. Basic details.
All right, so we have another question here. Is it better to lease or to buy my practice facility?
What do y'all think? Buy? In reality, it depends on your strategy, to be honest with you. If I just say just buy or just lease, it might not fit into your strategy, right? But for most people, in most scenarios, and I used to always ask this question, it depends, right? For most people, I would suggest if you can buy the facility, buy the facility. Because believe it or not, the facility that we ended up buying, he was a periodontist for 20 years in the community. He actually went to UNC. He was a periodontist for 20 or 22 years, somewhere along those lines. And when he finally had to sell, unfortunately, he came down ill. And when it was finally time to sell, guess what was the only asset he had left to sell? The building. He had to close down 6 months earlier, so the patients really didn't have a home. So what they thought was the asset, which is building up the patient base and everything like that, it didn't really amount to much, unfortunately, for him. So he had to focus more on the sale, and that was the only asset left. So again, if you have the opportunity, and especially if you want to be in one office or two offices for the remainder of your entire career, which will be a very fun and fulfilling career, if you can get your hands on it, definitely do that.
Cool. Question number 3 here. It says, how did you go about how did you go about building your dental team?
So those faces look pretty familiar up there, right? It's very important when you go about actually putting together your practice, you have people that you can lean on, right? It's really about building a team. Like, you only go as far as your team goes. Sometimes, again, being in dental school, it's more of an isolated game, right? Like, you have your groups that you're in, but even within your groups, there's only so many root canals that can go around in a group, and everything is such a competitive way sometimes. It doesn't really focus on the fact that you're gonna need your assistants, you're gonna need your front desk, you're gonna need somebody doing insurance, you're gonna need somebody. There's somebody at every single spot doing what they need to do so you can do what you need to do, right? A wise person once told me, I get a lot of small gyms here and there, you wanna learn how to do everything in your office, right? So some of my colleagues have literally never filed a claim before. And y'all don't know what a claim is, but basically when y'all are upstairs doing work on patients, once you finish, there's a way that you have to dictate that to the insurance company or to whoever else and tell them, we did 3 restorations on a patient. And then from that, you send that off, you get paid with the claim. A lot of people would never even sent off a claim because they have an insurance coordinator, right? But what happens if your insurance coordinator to stop showing up? Or somebody falls ill? Or somebody has to be with their child because somebody's sick, right? You wanna know how to do everything, but at the same time, you gotta learn how to delegate what can be done by others better, right? Do you think it's best for my time to be worried about, let's say, payroll, or do you think it's better being a dentist? I know how to do payroll, right? But that's not the best use of my time. Even when it comes to just taxes, right? Getting myself together within my taxes. I could do taxes, right? But is that the best use of my time? So one of the biggest downfalls, especially for dentists as they're opening up, is on the financial side. People not really having their finances together, especially on the tax side. So again, that's why I like to bring Kingsley in the room so he can tell y'all from a CPA side of things, some of the things that we need to start looking at. Because one of the things you're gonna need when you're building out your team, outside of somebody amazing in the front and amazing in the back, meaning when I say frontliners, the first people to see the patients, whether that's insurance coordinator, front desk, whatever it is like that. Backline, whether that's an assistant, a hygienist, whatever it is like that, right? But now, you're gonna have to have a team that resides outside of your office, which is, whether that's be your accountant, your lawyer, somebody who is practice acquisitions, somewhere along those lines, right? So Kingsley, from a tax perspective, what are some things that they should start keeping in mind to make sure that they're ready for practice ownership?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference between, graduation day and whenever you do decide to open up, if that's on your heart, the biggest thing is you got to understand life changes dramatically, right? On every front, whether that goes from, right, the fact that you were just in school, going to classes, and now you're, right now, talking to patients, you're literally responsible for, the hygienist, the front office staff, the back office staff, you're talking with your CPA. So the first thing to just understand is life is going to be much different, right? Same thing with your tax brackets. Same thing with your finances. Everything is going to change, honestly, almost overnight. So most important thing is just to understand that it's okay not to know everything, right? I always tell Doc, if you told me to do a root canal versus listen, I know what I know. The same thing with just understanding finances in general. Right? If that's your area that you love, that you could see yourself really trying to grow in, right? Maybe you can go out and learn some of these things on yourself. If not, right, it's perfectly okay with understanding, who to talk about with certain topics. So, I mean, the biggest thing that comes with taxes is just because it's in your account doesn't mean it all belongs to you. And the reason I say that is because a lot of practice owners, and I talk to a lot every day, they go out and spend money that they don't have, and then come April, right, we're having some really sad conversations because come tax day, they've spent everything, right? They don't have anything left over. And so it becomes a very sticky situation, and that's probably one of the top 3 reasons that a lot of practice owners can really go under. So like I said, you really don't want to, especially when you're talking about government agencies, the IRS, different agencies like this, you never want to, start stepping on their toes, man. So it's always a fun conversation.
One thing I would say is you never really realize your need for a team until you get a team. When you're solo, all you know is solo, right? You do you. You work at your own speed, you work as hard as you can, you try to build as much as you can, right? One of the, probably the highlights moment that I realized that I'm glad we built a team the right way was towards the end of last year. Has anybody ever heard of a tax write-off? Anybody know what that means? Tax write-off, basically you make a certain amount, you write off some, and whatever's left is what you pay taxes on. That's what a tax write-off is. So basically, towards the end of last year, I remember having a tough conversation with Kingsley, and he told me how much I owed last year. And I was like, oh, word. That's what we did. And he told me, you got 1 or 2 options. You can either pay this bill or you can buy something to lower your bill. Kingsley, what's the thing you told me to buy?
CBCT, excuse me.
CBCT. Y'all know what a CBCT machine
Yeah.
is, right? CBCT machines cost about anywhere between $100,000 to $40,000, somewhere in between there, right? When you buy it, it lowers how much you owe in taxes immediately, right? He knows the different classifications. I'm not sure how that stuff works, but you can break it across. What is it? How do the schedules work?
That's a
See,
whole
do it
different
simple because
conversation.
I don't really know all that. Like,
I mean, pretty much the more you spend in your business, right, the government wants you to spend more money in your dental practice to improve your dental practice, right? When you go get the CBCT machine, you're able to service your clients, right? It's fully digital. You're not x-ray machine, you're able to service. So the government wants to incentivize practice owners to be able to go and do that. So they say the more you spend in the business, whatever, the more they'll give you on tax breaks. So essentially, long story short, without going into too many numbers and examples here is, if you have, let's just say you have $100, right, or $100 left over, and you go purchase a CBCT machine for $60. The $40 that's left over is the only thing you have to worry about paying taxes on, right, versus opposed to paying taxes on that $100 if you didn't go buy that CBCT machine, right? They want to incentivize you to go spend so that you can continue to grow and affect, right, and grow the economy, et cetera, right? So, yeah.
he had this conversation with me in like late November, and I'm like, fam, you gotta let me start this stuff earlier, right? And then he reminded me you didn't get your paperwork in. So I would stay on top of your paperwork for sure, because it was my fault. But one of the biggest things is you have to get it in your office, right? And I don't want to go into the specifics of the tax code, but it has to be in and in use. We were flying out for one of my colleagues' wedding that happened in January, and the CBCT was supposed to be delivered December 30th. What do? You either gonna go to the wedding or you gonna get the tax write-off. Which one? So not only did he tell me about the write-off, but he was actually there when they were putting in the CareStream CBCT machine, and it was delivered December 30th. So we were able to write it off for the previous year. So it's just small stuff like that. You go at it alone, you can. I mean, as a dentist, I promise you will never starve. Unless you're not doing good dentistry or you don't care about your patients, you won't starve. You're gonna be okay, right? But how quickly you get to your next level is gonna depend on the kind of professionals you have around you and the kind of team you're able to build. So just thinking through that, because I remember when I was going through the process, every mentor said the same thing. You're not gonna buy a CBCT in your first year. Understand that our mentors are gonna give us their best perspective, right? But a lot of stuff that they're working with is outdated, to be honest with you. And it's not a bad thing, right? Like, they're gonna give you what they have. But realize your mentor started a practice before COVID. We live in a different world now. This is not the same world we live in these days, right? So understanding that you take the parts that apply to your particular situation and you go around other parts, right? And that's how it is. So to God be the glory, now we have the CBCT. Now any given day, we can now take a CBCT on any different molar root canal. We can do them on even premolars if we really want to go out with to make sure we can see everything you see. All the implantology, everything is in place and what we need to do.
Okay, it says, what marketing and brand strategies can we employ to promote our dental practice and attract patients?
That's a good question. Same question I asked earlier. How many people here are interested in practice ownership one day? I would say the biggest thing is practice ownership is not for everybody. Because some people are honestly more passionate about other things than practice ownership, to be honest with you. We've had colleagues who, in dentistry, they do dentistry because they're passionate about it, but that's not really their love. So they start other businesses outside of it. One individual, he's a pediatric dentist. He focuses on real estate. And that's his practice. He practices within real estate. Another one started a pizza company, and that's their passion project. So don't think like you have to start a practice within dentistry. If you do, it's honestly, it'll be easier because what you do every single day would be your business, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. That's a beautiful thing about dentistry. If you haven't heard it lately, you have options. You can work 1 day a week. You can work 2 days a week. You can work 5 days a week. I have colleagues who work 6 days a week. You can do whatever you want within dentistry, right? So when it comes to the marketing side of things, it's a question I want to ask everybody here. Let's say, Trey, if you were starting a practice, how would you market? If you were starting a practice tomorrow, how would you market it? That's good. One thing I wanted to highlight is the fact that we said social media, and then we said Google. And the new versions of marketing and the way things are changing now, you literally have to be everywhere, right? That doesn't mean you have to work hard everywhere, but patients tend to do a dance like this, right? They either started at a different dentist, because realize by the time you graduate, people have had dentists before, right? They're not infants, right? So they probably had somebody before. Either they're happy with the person, they've moved, or they're not happy with the person, right? If they're in the other two, where they're not happy or they just moved, then they're open to becoming your patient, right? So they might find out about you via social media, right? And learn basic details about how you move, what kind of demographic you're trying to serve, everything like that. And then they go to what you said. They go to Google. They go to wherever the review sites are to do their research. People, the consumer today is a lot more educated than before. Before it was like, my friend told me, so I'm here, right? Now, even if your friend tells you, they're gonna go check and do their own research and say, what does Google say, right? What does whatever say? And that's why even as a dentist, before, they used to hang a shingle. Have everybody heard that before? Hang a shingle and just do business. That's what dentists used to do. And because it said dentist, people used to show up. That doesn't happen anymore. That doesn't happen anymore. So you gotta be a lot more aggressive, a lot more strategic in the way that you go about marketing yourself. And the best way to do it is to first identify what is your value proposition. Have anybody heard what a value proposition is? A value proposition is what you bring to the table, right? And once you figure out what you bring to the table, you can now focus all your marketing around it, right? Let's say, for instance, your value proposition is you focus on nothing but babies. Not kids, just babies, right? That's all you want to focus on. And in dentistry, honestly, you can say that if you want to. You can do whatever you want. Now, you just find a way to market around that fact. Find mothers, you find groups, individuals who need your services, people who need your care, right? The more broad you are, the harder it is for people to find you, right? If you're here in dental school, it's very easy for people to find you, right? What are you in school for? What are y'all in school for? It's very easy to figure that out, right? So it's very easy to market to you, right? So the same way with the patients. You got to figure out what you bring to the table and you want to give it to them. And first you have to just be okay with the fact that not everybody's going to be your people, right? Not everybody's going to be your patient. And it's okay. Wise person once told me, and I love my wise people, that you want to figure out who is your ideal patient. So while you're going through clinic, you want to identify who is the person you would like to serve every single day.
So question 5 right here. What are tips to keep in mind for site location when starting/acquiring a dental practice?
You want to pick where you want to live and practice there. I feel like sometimes we start where we want to practice and okay with living there. I've done it because we were traveling and different things like that, and the people in your life will hate it. There's one city in particular that we had a 10-month contract in, or layering other contracts with, that she absolutely hated. I mean, she hated it. She says when she thinks back to those times, those days are in gray. Like there's no color to those days. So why live somewhere like that long term, right? When you can practice everywhere. We said earlier, everybody has teeth or gums, right? Meaning people need us everywhere, right? We're different. Let's say a cardiologist. Does everybody need a cardiologist? Who's your cardiologist? Seriously, I'm being very serious. Who's your cardiologist? Who's your nephrologist? That's what I'm asking. But if you ask anybody here who's your dentist, they either have a dentist or they have been to a dentist, right? I've never been to a cardiologist, thank God, right? So understand, you are needed everywhere. Unlike most careers, you are needed everywhere. What you got? Just keep it in your
I think you
hands.
summed it up cool. I mean, I think my only, I guess, tidbit on that, man, is, you know what I'm saying? I'm a beard.
I would say keep it in your hand.
Oh, my God. Oh, my only tidbit on that, man, is don't be afraid to not be in a big city. You know, we're from Charlotte, so, you know, Charlotte, you know, is the biggest city in North Carolina. Don't be afraid to find, you know, on the outskirts or even in a remote location. Because, yeah, there's less people, but it may be more demand, right? There may be really no dentists within, you know, miles and miles and miles, and people have to travel to big cities to go find them. So just don't be afraid to take the decision that's not most popular between your peers, you know what I mean? So that's it for me.
People are going to say there's competition and areas are too many dentists there. If you have a different value proposition than what everybody else brings into the market, you have no competition. If you truly know who you are and what you bring to it, no one can compete with you. No one could ever be a better version of you than you. So the quicker you figure out what makes you you, the quicker you eliminate all competition. People say it's impossible in Charlotte. We're in Charlotte, right? People say things are impossible. I searched for a year and a half, couldn't find a practice in Charlotte. So we had to start. We had to find a different situation. And when I say we, it's really God. Had to find a way. So the question is, like, are you going to figure out what makes you special and bring that to the marketplace?
Last one here says, how do we generate dental wealth?
Does anybody know what generational wealth? Anybody heard the phrase generational wealth? A wealth that supersedes this generation and goes to the next generation? All generational dental wealth is generational wealth using dentistry as your avenue, the vehicle, right? To get you from point A to point B, right? Is anybody interested in creating generational wealth for their family one day, maybe, possibly? Yeah. Some people aren't. It's okay, you know. Shoot, you work a nice job, get a nice car, go on nice vacations, you know. For others, you're trying to set other people up one day, you know. Regardless of why you do what you do, it's just important to know why you do what you do, right? So understand within dentistry, we have a very unique opportunity within dentistry to not only help yourself and be able to take care of your patients, but also take care of those around you, seriously. But what I will say is there are a few small decisions along the way that will separate your income from just being income to an asset generator. Just a few small decisions, not a lot of decisions, right? One of them is that I personally was the one we talked about earlier when it comes to your building. That's an important decision to make. You only make that decision once. You realize that, right? You only make that decision once. And that carries you throughout the rest of your career. She said she bought a house. That's an important decision. So it's not the everyday cut back on a cup of coffee every day and you'll become whatever like this. That's not it. Come on. Dentists don't starve. Dentists don't starve unless they choose to starve. But it's these small decisions here or there. Where are you going to live? Where are you going to work? What are you going to build? Different things like that will determine the entire trajectory financially. Can you add anything on that before we open it up for questions?
I guess the only thing I would add in is whenever we, say generational dental wealth, we're not talking finances, right? I think we can all understand that. Even the dentists that I've talked to, right, the ones that are most, happy holistically are typically the ones that show up to the office with the best attitudes, that have the best teams, that have the best patients, right? Because people that come in are excited to see them. So just understand that, life is not lived in silos. Like each area of life is not necessarily, okay, once I'm done being a dentist, I put the dentist hat on, then I go back to family. Like your family life is going to affect your professional life, vice versa. So it's just important to understand that this is a holistic conversation and not just being right financially. Because like I said, I've talked to plenty of dentists that's okay financially, but in every area of life, it's affecting what they're doing professionally. So
people think if you make more, you'll be happier, or if you make more, you'll be better well off. I remember it was one of the clients he was working with, I think they were pulling in about $600,000 a year. It was still paycheck to paycheck.
yeah.
It doesn't change anything. So you have to make the decision, the active decision that you want to use what you have to do what you need to do. One thing I always say is save more than you earn, invest more than you save. If you do that, you will build generational dental wealth. It'll be in what you want it to be, right? I'm not going to come in and give you specifics. This is the things you need to buy, because everybody's different. You know what I'm saying? Like, generational dental wealth might mean freedom to travel when you want to travel, spend time with your kids, being off every Monday and every Friday so you have time to yourself. It can literally be anything. But you have to figure out what that means for you and how you can get there. But if you just simply follow those steps, right? Save more than you earn, invest more than you save, you'll be solid for sure.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, when we talk about tax write-offs, the biggest thing is going to happen is whenever you are a practice owner, whenever you are, we call it 1099, right? Travel dentistry when you're working with multiple locations. Typically, if you're in that position, there's a lot more flexibility. I mean, we've talked about travel a lot of times here. I mean, going to trade shows, going to go get your hands speed up, maybe going to networking events in other cities, right? It's personal travel for the most part. Maybe you're going down to Miami, but now you have some business associated with that. I mean, so the airfare, the flights, right? The hotels, the Ubers, you know, a lot of things that you're doing that you would otherwise do personally that you can't write off. Now that you're a business owner, now that you're a practice owner, you have the opportunity to do that. So we always look at those things that normally would otherwise be personal in nature. For instance, even your personal residence, there's certain ways that we can, you know, have a home office. You as a practice owner, now we're being tax savvy, because in reality, the government, right, all taxes is, and I've said this before, is an incentive system. They want to incentivize people to do certain things, and they want to incentivize, incentivize people to do other things. Whatever that is. But just in general, right, there are a lot of, right, tax breaks when it comes to, like I said, travel, when it comes to you having a home, when it comes to, I mean, pretty much anything that you can think of, as long as we can assign some type of business purpose to it, man, you're going to be in a good, area. So even Doc, right, when he travels for travel dentistry, driving from Wilmington to Fayetteville to all these different areas, his miles are a huge one. Huge one. I mean, earlier you said he almost did about 60,000 miles this year. You know what I mean? Or last year.
2 years.
2 years? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, long story short, every mile you drive is typically about 60 cents per mile. So if somebody just does 10,000 miles, that's a $6,000 tax write-off just for the fact that they were driving. Right? So they want to kind of give you different incentives to do certain activities, just long story short.
So in reality, the closer your life becomes to your business, the easier everything becomes financially, if that statement makes any sense at all. Meaning that the sooner that your expenses align with, your personal expenses align with your business expenses, the more take home you have, right? Yeah. For instance, let's say simple things like, I used to spend money on clothes, now I spend money on clothes. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Now things say Empire, this is a write-off now. That make sense? Small things like that. I used to pay for cars, now the business paid for the car, and we've driven almost 60,000 miles, right? That's written off. So it's not, you're literally doing the same things you already do. You just do them in the way that the government wants you to do it, if that makes sense, right? Food, simple things like that. You ask for write-offs, right? That's why I asked you for the flyer. Say, give me the flyer for this because I got to write off this pizza. You see what I'm saying? So just small stuff like that when you go out to dinner, when you get coffee. Small stuff like that it can become a business write-off. Next week, what day is it? Oh, Vegas. We're going to, I think Thursday night, we're flying out to Vegas for a continual education on implants, right? That's a write-off. We got, on Friday, we have a course from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. where they're just gonna be teaching us on all over dentures, meaning like basically drop 2 to 4 implants, put dentures on top of it, and from there, the rest of the weekends are to do whatever we want in Vegas. So that's the thing, you just gotta find ways to really legitimize things. And the reason they want it like that is because they want you to get better at your craft. So if you're getting better at your craft, like you said, they're gonna incentivize you by letting you write it off. And like we said earlier with the CBCT, it's gonna get paid one way or another. Either you're gonna pay in cash or you're gonna do what they want you to do. One of the two. What else y'all got?
Of her income should she set aside for taxes if she is not a W-2 employee?
That's a good question. Okay. I see what you're asking. So basically, and I'm gonna let him talk about the difference after, but when it comes to you being an associate, you're more of a W-2, right? When you're more of a practice owner, you're a different tax category, right?
Yeah, but the highest is 37. I mean, it's about 40% of your day spent
paying the government. So in reality, if we're taking this into productions, right? Because usually for most employers, you're making about 28 to about 35% in production, somewhere around there. And that's usually good across the nation, depending on where you're at, will depend on it, right? So if you're making about 28 to 35 on the highest side, right? And you're paying about 20% taxes, that means about 6% of your actual production. 6 to about, what did that take us to? About 7 or 8% of your production is what you got to set aside for taxes. You want to explain the difference between a 1099 and a W-2?
Yeah, I mean, essentially W-2 employees, I mean, you've all worked summer jobs, you've all worked high school jobs, right? Those typically going to be your W-2 positions. The things that you clock into every day, you typically may have some type of health benefits, some type of 401k match. You're typically going to be required to show up at a certain time and do certain things. That's going to be your W-2, right, position. The biggest things with that, right, like I said, we were talking about taxes right now. Typically, you get taxed first before you ever get your check as a W-2 employee. Whatever's left over after, they say take-home pay, whatever you have left over, that's when you go and you spend your life. You go travel, you go feed your kids, you go do whatever you need to do. But now as a business owner, it's reversed. So now you make your money first, then you go spend whatever you need to spend, and then whatever's left over. In some cases, it's zero left over, at least on paper, right? It's zero left over. So therefore, you pay $0 in taxes, right? There's people that produce $1 million. If their expenses $1 million, then they pay $0 in taxes that year. It's really that simple, right? It's written as plain as paper when it comes to taxes. But just long story short, biggest difference between W-2 or 1099, when we say 1099, it means business owner as well. It's all the same rules there. The biggest thing is W-2 employee, before you ever see your check, they've taken it. They've taken taxes out, which can be substantial, like I said, up to about 40%, right? Versus being a business owner, before they ever even touch anything out of your check, right, you get to go spend what you need to spend. And then whatever's left over, if there's anything left over, that's what you're responsible for paying taxes on. So hopefully that makes sense.
That's good.
Yeah, this was an exciting episode. We appreciate you all joining us on the Generational Dental Wealth Podcast. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Peace.
All right.